In my father's version of a better future, there was no place left for me. He didn't say it in the heat of a screaming match or during a moment of broken glass and slammed doors. He said it with the same practiced, clinical calm he used when firing a subcontractor who no longer served his bottom line. It was Christmas Eve outside Chicago, a night where the frost on the windows usually signaled warmth and family. Instead, it was the night I realized that in the Vance family, love was never unconditional. It was a line item on a balance sheet. And unfortunately for him, he was about to find out what happens when the person who's been balancing your books for a decade finally decides to close the account. My name is Sienna Vance. I am 34 years old, and for the last 10 years, I have worked as a senior documentation risk analyst for a regional lender in the heart of Chicago. My job is simple to describe but nearly impossible to execute. I find the lies that people hide in plain sight. I look at financial files, the multi-million-dollar ones, and I catch what everyone else is paid to ignore. I see the missing disclosures, the weak reserve explanations, the inconsistent sources of funds, and the signatures that appear just a few days too late to be legal. I spend my life finding the soft spots in massive deals before they split open and ruin people. For a decade, I was also the invisible pillar of the Vance family business. My father, Marcus Vance, loved to act like he was a self-made titan of the suburban real estate world. He had the expensive watches, the leased SUVs, and the booming voice that commanded every room. But Marcus Vance had a secret. He was a man built on shortcuts. He was brilliant at the handshake deal, but he was catastrophic with the paperwork reality. For years, I was the one who quietly reviewed his contracts at 2 a.m. I was the one who told him which lenders were getting suspicious. I was the one who clarified his inconsistencies before they reached the bank's compliance department. He called my job paper pushing. He joked at dinner parties that I was paid to worry for a living. He called me paranoid and too serious. But every time his empire started to shake, my phone was the first one he called. The Michigan vacation house was supposed to be his masterpiece. Why, a sprawling estate in southwest Michigan that he had already started talking about as if it were his birthright. To Marcus, it wasn't just a house. It was proof. Proof that he had made it. Proof that he was part of the elite. On Christmas Eve, as we were preparing for dinner, I asked him a simple question about the reserve verification for that Michigan deal. I had noticed a $400,000 gap that didn't make sense. Instead of answering, he looked at me with a coldness I will never forget. He told me that he was tired of my corrections. He said my constant questions were stifling the family's growth. Then he delivered the kill shot. He told me it would be best if I stopped being part of their lives, that he wanted to move forward into this new chapter without my negativity holding him back. He literally told me I was no longer welcome in his future. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. A risk analyst doesn't react to a bad deal with emotion. They react with data. I simply nodded, packed my bag, and drove back to Chicago through the snow. I didn't tell him that my name, my professional credentials, and my written pre-reviews were the only things making the bank comfortable with his shaky Michigan file. If he wanted a future without me, I decided to give it to him, completely. On Christmas morning, while the rest of the world was opening presents, I opened my laptop. I didn't send an angry text. I sent a formal legal withdrawal. I notified the lender, the broker, and the title company that, effective immediately, I was no longer involved in any documentation review, reserve verification, or communication regarding the Vance purchase. I requested that my name be removed from all active threads. I documented every timestamp. I saved every email. When you remove the foundation of a house, the roof doesn't fall immediately. There's a terrifying silence first. Then the cracks appear. By the afternoon of December 26th, the silence ended. My phone sat face down on my kitchen counter as I watched the snow fall over Lake Michigan. When I finally turned it over that evening, there were 36 missed calls. I'm 22 from my father, 10 from my sister Delaney, 4 from unknown numbers. The voicemails from Delaney were the first to arrive. At first they were screeching, accusing me of ruining the holiday because I left early. But by the 5th message, the tone changed. It was no longer anger, it was a high-pitched, vibrating panic. "Sienna, pick up. The broker is calling. There's a problem with the reserves. They're asking for the clarification letter you were supposed to write. Dad is losing his mind." Then came my father's messages. They followed the exact cycle of a man who realized he had just fired the only person who knew where the bodies were buried. The first was arrogant. "Sienna, stop being dramatic and call the bank." The third was manipulative. "We're family. We handle this together." The last one was hollow. "Sienna, please. Everything is stalling. I need you to fix this." The fix he wanted was for me to lie. He wanted me to use my professional reputation to explain away his lack of liquidity. But Marcus Vance had forgotten one thing. My reputation was only valuable because I never used it to protect a lie. At 9 p.m., I received a text from Gavin Doyle. Gavin was my father's high-priced attorney, a man who specialized in making the Vance family look legal when they were actually just lucky. His text was short. "We are facing a serious legal and financial problem. Call me immediately." I called him the next morning. Gavin didn't waste time with pleasantries. He told me the Michigan deal was collapsing. The lender had flagged the inconsistencies I had originally questioned. Because I had withdrawn my name, the bank now viewed the entire file as high risk. Without my written assurance, the short-term debt my father had hidden, an old contractor dispute, was now being treated as a material misrepresentation. "Sienna," Gavin said, his voice strained, "if you just sign a simple clarification note, we can steady the file. Marcus is willing to apologize. He didn't mean what he said on Christmas." "Gavin," I replied, staring at my reflection in the window, "Marcus meant every word. He told me he'd be better off without me. I am simply respecting his decision. If the file is shaky, it's because the facts are shaky. My name isn't a Band-Aid for his bad math." Despite the chaos, my father decided to attend the Naperville Chamber of Commerce holiday event that week. He was a man who believed that if you looked successful, you were successful. He was there to brag about the Michigan house, to shake hands with the very people who were funding his lifestyle. I decided to go too. Not for revenge, but for clarity. When I walked into that room, the air changed. My father saw me and tried to play the role of the loving patriarch. He walked over, a fake smile plastered on his face, surrounded by 3 of the city's biggest commercial lenders. "Sienna, glad you could make it," he boomed, trying to neutralize me. I didn't smile back. I looked at the lead lender from the group, a man I had worked with professionally on dozens of clean deals, and I asked a single, quiet question. "Did Marcus update you that I've formally withdrawn my professional oversight from the Michigan file? I want to make sure the compliance chain is accurate." The silence that followed was deafening. The lender's smile vanished. He looked at my father, then back at me. "Withdrawn? We were under the impression you were still the primary analyst on the reserve chain." "I withdrew in writing on December 25th, I said clearly. "Any reliance on my name after that point is unauthorized." I watched my father's empire die in that moment, not with a bang, but with the look of a man who realized that his credit was actually just my credibility, and he had just spent his last cent. The collapse wasn't fast, which made it more satisfying. The Michigan deal was terminated within 72 hours. My father lost his massive deposit. But more than that, he lost his mask. Once one lender saw the cracks, they all started looking. The old contractor debt he'd been hiding? It turned into a lawsuit. The line of credit he used for his SUVs? It was called in. Within 6 months, the Vance family business was a shell of its former self. He had to sell the equipment. He had to fire the staff. He eventually had to sell 60% of the company for pennies on the dollar just to stay out of bankruptcy. Delaney, who had spent her life spending money I helped protect, lost her luxury apartment and her leased life. She blamed me, of course. She said I was cold. But as I told her the last time we spoke, I didn't destroy the family. I just stopped being the one who was forced to save it. I closed on my own condo in Chicago a month later. It's not a mansion in Michigan. It's a 1,500 square foot space with a view of the city I love. But every brick in that building is mine. There are no hidden liabilities, no ego-driven lies, no family members who treat my future like their personal emergency fund. My father said he would be better off without me, and in the end, I gave him exactly what he asked for. He got his future, and I got my freedom. Because the most expensive mistake you can ever make is assuming that the person who has been carrying you will keep doing it even after you've tried to kick them to the curb. Boundaries aren't cruel, they are just the price of reality. And for Marcus Vance, reality was a price he could no longer afford to pay.